Good evening, radio listeners. Welcome to Musical Ecologies, a monthly symposium on music and sound. I'm your host, Dan Joseph, and I'm coming to you live, although not exactly as we had planned tonight. We had planned to come live from the Old Stone House in Park Slope, Brooklyn, where our series is based. However, weather had other plans. So unfortunately, we're not able to broadcast live from the Old Stone House, although of course we wouldn't have an audience there, as our series has been suspended. But we've taken to the airwaves. And tonight, we're resuming our artist events for the first of 3 monthly live broadcasts. Thank you to our broadcast partner Wave Farm for bringing this event to you via WGXC 90.7 FM radio for open ears in New York's Upper Hudson Valley and on the World Wide Web at wavefarm.org. It's a little after 8 p.m. in New York City. And tonight, coming through the remote channels of the internet, my guest tonight is composer and filmmaker Phill Niblock. Welcome, Phill. Do we have you there? I believe you're muted, Phill. So my guest is Phill. We're going to be speaking tonight.
Actually, I'm muted. Yeah, sorry.
There you are. Hello, Phill. Welcome, Phill.
Well, there's nothing here either. Nothing.
Okay, well, listen, we'll be coming, Phill and I will be conversing here for the next 2 hours, mixing it up with some recent and not so recent works for bagpipes, guitar and bagpipes. And we're going to be talking about what Phill has been up to. Phill is sitting in his loft in Lower Manhattan on this snowy evening, and I'm here in my garden apartment in Park Slope. And so we always begin Musical Ecologies with a conversation. And we'll begin that conversation now. Welcome, Phill. How are you tonight?
Pretty good. Hey, what's growing in your garden now?
Well, not a whole lot growing in the garden right now. We do have a lot of winter birds in the back, however. Lots of
that's good.
sparrows and juncos and chickadees. But so listen, so I just to clarify, just to explain to everyone, we were supposed to do this event live at the house, and the snowstorm just made it unsafe. So we decided we would just do this remotely, and
I am very sad not to be there because I haven't been to the Old Stone House, and I really expected to go this time. So it's in the last 2 days it was glorious in New York with very bright sun. And suddenly today it snows and made it difficult for all of us. So.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's been a pretty wintry spell. I mean, there's winter weather all over the country as we're hearing, as the polar vortex is in effect.
But, Texas, you know.
Yeah, Texas is having a hard time. Yeah. Well, listen. I'm sure we have a lot of people out there listening. So let's hello again to all of our listeners. And once again, this is Musical Ecologies. I'm Dan Joseph, and my guest tonight is Phill Niblock. And we're going to be talking about some of your. Let's get started with some of what you've been up to. I mean, obviously, all of us have had our lives disrupted in multiple ways during this pandemic period. But you have been somewhat surprising in how busy you've been this past year. It's been kind of a banner year for you. Isn't that right?
I've been calling it my most productive year of my life, even.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, you know, most of us know you as a very avid world traveler for much of your career and your life, and so this is obviously a different state of affairs. But nonetheless, you're saying that this is one of the most productive years in your life. Tell us some of the highlights. I mean, I know you've got a lot of new CDs, some vinyl records, a lot of presentations. What are some of the highlights or things that are on your plate right now?
Well, you know, for the last 23 years, I've been touring 8 months a year so I'm not in New York much. But here, I've been here since November of 2019. And so I had to do something. So I got started on a lot of different projects. So there's even a few concerts this week. This is a very busy week. Some having to do with Elaine Summers, a tribute to her, which will be done in Amsterdam. And we have Catherine Librovskaya and I have a few pieces for that tomorrow.
So this is a virtual event that's originating
it's actually Saturday. Sorry.
Saturday.
And then tomorrow we're part of a festival in Nantes in France, and we're doing about an hour project on I think next week, but there's a seminar like tomorrow, something like that. So
I see. So
I've been working on a bunch of projects. I did a piece, a commission piece for the Phoenix Ensemble in Basel in the summer, June of 2019. And after that, there was another version of it played by the Arditi String Quartet, the very famous string quartet. And so I thought it would be interesting to have another version to add to that to make a good CD length. The pieces are 22 minutes. So the piece was called Exploratory Rhine Version Looking for Daniel, rather a long title.
Right.
And it was because Daniel Boas, who had been a sort of co-organizer of the ensemble, had died about a year ago. And he was a favorite of mine, but a favorite of the ensemble. So we dedicated the piece to him. So I found a few people who were interested in doing it, but I really spread the word. And so now there are probably 18 different versions of that scored piece that have been either recorded. I think 13 have been recorded and another 5 are yet to be recorded.
Nice. We're
planning to make a 7 or 8 CD box set of all of those.
Wait, what? Tell me again the title. This is the Exploratory Project? Is that the title?
The full title is Exploratory Rhine Version, because Basel's on the Rhine, of course.
Rhine version.
Looking for Daniel. And part of the reason is that Daniel died by jumping into the Rhine from a bridge. So.
Oh my goodness.
Very sad. Yeah.
I see. Well, this is. So this is currently. I think as of September, you were projecting it as a 5 CD set. It's blossomed into how many now potentially?
Well, it's either 7 or 8. Depends on how many more get recorded. Right. But the label wanted to do one at a time, so we're bringing out the first one, which will be the Phoenix Ensemble in Basel, and then the Arditi, and then another one with the piece we're playing tonight, David Watson, on bagpipes and guitar, in which he plays bagpipes half the time and guitar half the time, and the guitar is even broken into electric guitar with EBOs and acoustic guitar with EBOs.
Excellent. Okay. Well, that's great. Well, that's something we're going to hear later. That's I think probably in the second half. But that's all part of the exploratory part. So that's been one of the big projects this year that you've been overseeing here, all these different versions. So when can we expect this one to be finalized and released in this
Well,
CD
it should be
collection?
within a month or so, as far as I can tell.
I see. So it sounds like all the audio is in and it's about ready to be pressed, something like that. Is that right?
Well, that part is, the first one is about ready to be pressed, yeah. I've even I wrote an essay for the notes.
Goodness, an essay about the piece and about your
well,
piece?
about the piece about
Daniel,
the general.
Right, and you said that this piece, the original piece, was written for Arditi String Quartet. Is that right?
No, it was written for the Phoenix Ensemble.
Oh, the
in
Phoenix.
Basel.
I'm sorry. Where did
They commissioned the piece
right.
in the spring of 2019, and then we played it in Basel twice, and then in Geneva once in June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. So that's it.
I see. Well, good. Well, we'll definitely look for that when it's published. And tonight we're going to hear one of those realizations of the exploratory Rhine, looking for Daniel. Excellent. So let's see what else you were mentioning earlier. Well, you mentioned Elaine Summers, and you're doing an event. This is the event on Saturday. Did you say as a tribute to Elaine? So Elaine, just for our listeners, Elaine was the original founder. Is that right? Of Experimental Intermedia.
Yes, 1968.
1968,
which was the same year that I moved into this loft, 53 years ago.
Goodness gracious! So,
but then we were both producing a lot under the name Experimental Intermedia all during the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
But in 1985, she left New York and moved to Florida for a few years, and got bored and moved back again. She was actually living here in my loft for a while because I was on tour a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I offered her the chance to live here, and then she bought an apartment. Eventually, she was staying in the Emily Harvey Foundation loft on Broadway, 537 Broadway.
Right. Well, great. Well, Experimental Intermedia has, of course, been a vibrant center for your loft, where you're sitting right now, and where at least for the better part of 2 months a year for I don't know how many years, 40 plus years, you've been presenting.
1973 was the first series.
So you've been presenting these series in most commonly in March and December. Is that right?
Now March and December for maybe the last 20 years. But
right.
Before that, we were doing them in several months a year, maybe 4 or 5. Now we're doing between 15 and 20 a year, but split between those two months.
Right.
We have a big March series coming, so look out for the announcement.
Right, and you can learn more about that. It's experimentalintermedia.org, I believe, is the website for the latest schedule. So, of course, all these events at Experimental Intermedia will be remote in some form or fashion, I imagine.
Well, our December series was completely virtual, and then this series will also be completely virtual for obvious reasons.
Obvious reasons, right. But
it was very interesting because it allowed us to be seen and heard in many different countries.
Right.
We got an amazing number of responses from even Europe, where people were staying up, because we kept our 9 o'clock New York time for the start of the series.
Right.
But people were staying up until 5 in the morning watching, and then doing the Zoom afterwards. We always have a Zoom session afterwards,
right,
so people can hang out
right
in our virtual kitchen.
That's right. Well, great. Well, I look forward to hanging out in that virtual kitchen this next month in March at some point. And and I guess hopefully further down the road, we hope to have some in-person events again. But so most of this is like, I guess, mostly Zoom stuff. And well, great. Well, so I guess what other stuff? Anything else coming up in the near term you want to talk?
Why don't we have a little bit of music, and then we can?
I think that would be great.
Go back to talking in between.
Perfect. So all right. So the first selection that we've chosen here is Bag from 2014. That's performed by David Watson on the Scottish bagpipe. Anything you want to tell us about Bag?
No, other than it was a great recording session. David Watson and also David First went to Boston to record in the Berkeley Sound Studios, set up by Neil Leonard, a composer who was teaching there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great session. And we used a microphone, which I had found and recorded a bunch of stuff with in Berlin, which is the Browner microphone, which was really fantastic.
Uh-huh.
And so we recorded all that stuff there, all the material for the piece. And then I came back and did a piece for both of them in Pro Tools. So I'm just building the piece in Pro Tools from the material that was recorded there.
Right. And this composition is made up entirely of bagpipe tones. Is that right?
It's totally recorded material. There's no effects other than pitch shift. And
all right. Well,
David actually says he was disappointed because I didn't use the drones of the thing, but just the pitch pipe, which plays the tunes. So, but probably the drones are in there because they're in that microphone as well. So,
well, great. Well, we'll listen to that, and I think we should mention. We definitely should mention. Well, in our original idea for tonight's event, which we were to have done at the Old Stone House, David Watson, the performer, was to have joined us and played along with the pre-recorded parts. And of course, since we weren't able to do that due to weather, David has earlier this evening, in fact, David has recorded an additional part, just as he would have done live. And so the mix that we're about to hear is a mix with a newly added performance part by David Watson here in Brooklyn, New York. And so let's get right to that. I'm going to cue that up right now. And this is Phill Niblock's Bag. And you're listening to Musical Ecologies. Stay with us. Okay, we're back. That was Phill Niblock's Bag from 2014, performed by David Watson on the Scottish bagpipes. Did you want to say something about that piece, Phill?
I want to say particularly that I'm very happy to have a performance with David again after all these months of no performances.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great pleasure working with him as a friend and as a musician for these many years that we have worked together.
Absolutely, yeah. So you have at least a few pieces now for bagpipes and also guitars that David plays, but mainly the bagpipe pieces are mostly David's. Is that right?
That's David, yeah.
Yeah.
The other guitar pieces were actually done with other people, and David has frequently played with them live as this. Also wanted to thank Bob Bellerow for being with us to tech this session. So
Right, absolutely. Thanks to Bob. And Bob worked with David this afternoon or this evening to record that expanded version of, that was sort of an original realization with some fresh recorded tracks by David Watson today, engineered by Bob. And, well, great. Well, I have a few questions. I mean, that's a kind of a classic piece, Bag. The form that you have established in that piece is, kind of your classic form where things start out somewhat, thin and gradually grow into sort of a big swarm of microtones and all kinds of all sorts of harmonics and sounds sort of grow out of that. So I'm curious how, at what point did you sort of hit on this form, as it were, that's become kind of your classic, piece?
sort of basically it all started in 1968 when I had the idea to do this music, and it's the only music that I do and only music that I ever did, actually.
Right.
Virtually. There are some other sound collage pieces, but this is basically the music. It's always amazing to me how different so many of these pieces sound, considering it's somewhat the same formula.
Right.
But the microphones do a lot in that. So in the early days, I recorded tones, and I even recorded different pitches from the musicians.
Mm-hmm.
But now I generally record one set of pitches, and then I do the microtones in the computer by pitch shifting just the tones and stuff. So so it's a completely different way of working. But and now also because of the computer, it's possible to have even 32 tracks. I found that having 24 voices is probably about the best kind of sound with this material. So
24 is kind of the optimum.
When you get much more than that, it tends to get more muddy. But
right.
Although there's a great piece for 32 tracks for cello with Arnie de Forza, which I like very much.
So that's the exception.
And also
to the rule.
recorded the first piece recorded with a Browner microphone in Marcus Schmickler's studio in Cologne. Was really an incredibly great sound. We even recorded one track with a Neumann microphone, and then the other track with the Browner. And the Neumann really sounds like a dime store microphone in comparison to the Neumann.
I see. Well, so the microphones certainly make a difference, and the recording techniques and all of that. But ultimately, what's happening here is just the layering of pitches that are slightly out of tune, and the more you layer, the more you add, the more sort of acoustic phenomena sort of emerge out of that. And I think it's important also to mention here that typically when your music is presented in live in a concert setting or a live event setting, you usually the volume's quite high, and that's another facet of this music. When it's ideally presented, you have a very high volume, and that serves to sort of exaggerate even more some of this acoustic phenomena. So you're sort of famous for presenting your work at a pretty high volume. So that's recommended to turn it up. Is that right?
Sure enough, I always admonish the audience to turn up the sound.
Right. Well, I've got my signal pretty cranked here, and headphones are nice too. But I'm sure it's coming out loud and clear through the airwaves tonight, and so great. Well,
music is just interrupt because the music is very much about what happens within the space. So normally I work with a 4-channel system. Even though the sound is stereo, but it's crossed stereo, and it's a matter of exciting the room with speakers. That's the real critical part.
Right.
So if you're an audience sitting in the room, it's about the way the sound reverberates in the room. So it's always better if it's in a fairly big space and there's enough room for it to move, where the speakers are pretty much in the corners of the space.
Right.
And fill the space. So.
Right, and you're in a sense you're describing your space there. Your not only your workspace, but your presentation space at Experimental Intermediate, and your living space. So that's you have a fairly customized and you have your own environment where the music really has emerged. I gather that's a big part of how you've developed this style was, growing out of the space that you've sort of designed for it. Is that right?
I guess you could say that.
Yes,
yeah.
I guess you could say that. But it's certainly translatable into other spaces. I mean, I've certainly experienced your work in other venues outside of your own, of course, and it can be replicated in a multitude of ways very, very effectively. The roulette concerts, for example, that you've been doing now every December 21st for, I don't know, how many years now have you been doing your solstice event at Roulette?
Only about 5 years of Roulette.
5 years.
1976 from here.
Right.
Well, we had to move to Roulette because of a landlord problem. But that's
right. Well, that's always a major event on the new music calendar here in New York, the December 21st concert, and it was always wonderful to hear it when I had the opportunity at your space at Experimental Intermediate. But I would say it's been also quite effective, and effective in different ways. I'd say at Roulette, which is also a wonderful venue, well equipped, and it's gone over very well there also. But at this point I wanna bring in the. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I had two sort of comments. About sound systems or
sure
relevant to sound systems.
Okay.
One was that one of the best concerts that I ever heard was in the Arnold Feely Gallery in Bristol, England, when there were 4 D&B sound speakers in the corners of the space, in a big black box space.
Okay.
And it really sounded incredibly good. And so when I can, I asked to use D&B speakers, but I've just made a new series of pieces, which is another 2 CD set coming out very soon, which was a commission from the Hermes Foundation in Tokyo, sort of done by Matthew Copeland, curated by Matthew Copeland, a curator in England who has been very good to me in doing a couple of retrospectives of my work.
Nice.
And a sound engineer there, or a guy there, who put together the recording session we're using of a vocal quintet, sextet, recording one of the ExplWatson pieces. But there are 5 pieces commissioned, and they're going to be in an exhibition in the Hermes Gallery in Tokyo, and probably April to July or something like that, from what I understand.
Nice.
But this other friend, Nao Nishihara, put together a D&B sound system so that
fabulous
D&B speakers show up again.
Nice.
In Tokyo.
That'll be part of the installation at the gallery.
They're German speakers. Yeah.
Do you expect to make that trip, or is that out of the question at this point? to attend the exhibition? I know you've been talking about it, but
I was hoping to go in June, but I just got some notice this week that they don't think that we should come.
Right.
The Hermes Foundation don't think that we should come. So
no, I think it's still a little too soon, but hopefully,
we'll see.
Hopefully by the end of the year, or okay. Well, I we're getting close to the top of the hour here. Again, you're listening to Musical Ecologies live from New York City. It's a little before 9 p.m. on Thursday the 18th, and I'm your host Dan Joseph, and I'm with composer and filmmaker Phill Niblock, and we're getting into we're getting close to the second hour, and I just something I want to bring up before we get to the next piece that we're going to listen to, and that is the role that your films play in your work. Now it's long-standing that you've been presenting your music, by itself, just as we are here tonight. We're just listening to the tracks, but most of the time, I think most of the time anyway, your music is presented along with your films, and oftentimes multiple projections. And you have a huge body of film work that typically goes with your music in performance. So I just wanted you to talk a little bit about how those two things came together, or in what was the sequence there. I mean, were they always together, or have they always had their own autonomous lives? And at what point did this audiovisual intermedia sort of approach develop for you in your work?
Oh, what a broad topic! What a broad topic.
Well, I think it's important to at least touch on it.
What happened basically was I began to do some performances in 1968, which combined film and music in the same event, and also dance sequences at Judson Church, the Judson Dance Theater.
On Washington Square.
And on Washington Square in New York. And then they went on and went in different places, but there were 4 different events called the Environment Series. And as the time went on, the music became more and more important. But the dance was still there. But I couldn't do very many concerts with this troupe of 2 dancers and 3 technicians trying to go on the road.
Right.
And I really wanted to tour myself because the music became also much more important in the early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided to do a series of films which were essentially, I thought, dance films of looking at the movement of people working in everyday tasks, mostly agricultural, all over the world. So I started a series of films, which went from 1973 until 1991, where I shot in many different countries, people doing agricultural or fishing work or something like that.
Right.
And I continue to show that material, usually, if I can, at least 2 images at the same time.
Right.
The idea is that it's not about what's happening in the images. It's about sort of looking at the movement, as the music is very much about movement in the space. So there's the ideological contemplation.
I see. So the combination of the music and film grew out of your original company creating scores for dance, and it sounds like it was somewhat of almost like a practical consideration. I mean, as you were citing the practicalities of touring and stuff, but at the same time, it sounds like an extension of the dance experience, the performative experience in some way.
Partly it was a practical thing because I'm a photographer and filmmaker, and so I wanted to incorporate that. And I'm also not a performer.
Right.
So that this film sort of takes the place of what would be performing on stage, which I don't do. I sit quietly in a corner.
Right.
now playing my music from a computer instead of from a tape recorder. But
Right.
basically, that's it. That's the visual part of my performance.
I see.
But I'm also very interested in that idea of fairly high resolution images.
Mm-hmm.
And I chose not abstract images like most of the experimental film of the 60s, 70s, but to use very realistic images,
Right.
which put me off the experimental film
Mm-hmm.
category. So I was never considered much of an experimental filmmaker.
Right. Right. But well, this is a hybrid form here that you've developed. So, well, listen, this is fascinating. I want to pick this up hopefully in the second hour. But as we're coming up to 9 p.m., I want to get started here with our second recorded piece that we're going to listen to, and have that play over the hour. There's going to be some changeovers and stuff. But let's just set this one up really quickly here and get the second piece of the program tonight.
Let's get going. Let's get going.
Well, yes. In the interest of scheduling here, so the next piece is Sethwork from 2003, and this is a piece for unamplified guitars played with EBO. So that I take it that means acoustic guitars. Is that right?
Acoustic guitars, yeah.
Right. Okay. So this is from 2003, and again we have the original guitarist here was Seth Josel, but we have it augmented here with an additional live part performed earlier today and recorded by David Watson. So let's give Sethwork a listen, and we'll be back with you at the top of the hour, or a little after the top of the hour. Here's Sethwork by Phill Niblock from 2003. Okay, we're back. You're listening to Musical Ecologies, a monthly symposium on music and sound. I'm your host, Dan Joseph, and we just concluded listening to a work by Phill Niblock, our guest tonight on Musical Ecologies. The piece was called Sethwork from 2003. This is a work for unamplified guitars played with EBow. And so we're into our second hour. We started that piece a little before before 9 o'clock, and now we're into our second of 2 hours on Musical Ecologies. Welcome back, Phill. Phill is coming to us via Zoom from his loft in Lower Manhattan. So you're listening to Musical Ecologies, and this is a series that began in 2016, and our events take place at the Old Stone House in Park Slope, Brooklyn. And of course, our live events, in-person events, have been suspended. So we've shifted to the airwaves, and tonight is the first of 3 live broadcasts, once a month on Thursday nights, one for each month of February, March, and April. And I want to tell you about our upcoming events. Our next one is Thursday, March 18th, at this same time from 8 to 10 p.m. on these very airwaves. And our guest that night will be singer, songwriter, and scholar Gelsey Bell. And then our third event of the season, Thursday, April 15th, will feature sound artist and experimental musician Bob Bellarue. And I invite you to learn more about Musical Ecologies by visiting our website at musicalecologies.net. Join our mailing list there and stay up to date on all of our upcoming broadcasts. And we hope in the not-too-distant future our resumption of live in-person events at the Old Stone House in Park Slope, Brooklyn. So welcome back, Phill. We're into the second hour. And so Sethwork. So this was a piece, just extremely riveting, immersive piece for unamplified guitars. But of course, once it becomes a studio piece and now broadcast through the airwaves, and amplified, it becomes amplified. But I guess the original tone is that of an acoustic guitar. Was there a reason specifically why you chose the acoustic guitar as opposed to an electric guitar, which I think you've also worked with quite extensively?
Even too extensively. But I have two comments.
Please, sure.
One has to do with live performance with recorded pieces. I frequently do that on the road, where we have a live performer on stage performing with the piece which is recorded, which I'm probably playing from my computer.
Right.
And one of the aspects of that is to actually see a live performer on a stage, so that it has more of a feeling of a live performance.
Right.
Because I frequently do concerts where we don't have that, and I'm simply sitting there behind my computer,
right,
frequently playing solitaire on my iPhone. But this was a remarkable one because I could actually myself, listening to it on a sound system, hear how David Watson was really listening to the piece as he always does. He's very intuitive, right? And making real changes, because I could even hear the changes, which I normally don't.
Right. Well, you're speaking of David Watson's additional part, which I guess in effect we'll call a performance, although it happened earlier today. But so you're describing his contribution to the pre-recorded tracks that originated from Seth Josel. Do I have that right?
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was remarkable how he did change the sound.
Right.
By what he was doing, and it was very, very nice sounding.
Yeah. Well, you were hearing
one more comment about the recording was that this was a commission from the Deutschlandfunk radio station in Cologne, Germany.
Right.
And we recorded the piece in the Deutschlandfunk studios, which are set up for a symphony orchestra set on stage and an audience to be around it. So it was a huge space.
Right.
And the recording booth was on the fifth floor of the building. So we were looking down at the stage, and it was this little, I mean, Seth is not a very big guy. So he was sitting in a chair with no amplifiers, just two different guitars, a dobro and a acoustic guitar, and playing with an ebow with a microphone beside him. So it was this vast space with this tiny little guy sitting 5 floors below.
Right.
And we were recording. So
Nice.
it was remarkable that we got that sound, and it was very nice recording. So
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful piece, and it really gets it grows and transforms as all of your pieces do. And you know, one thing, listening to these pieces and of course listening to your music over many years, one thing that strikes me, while there are exceptions, for the most part, I think all your pieces fall somewhere in the range of like 20 to 25 minutes. Is that approximately? Is that basically right? I mean, or certainly a vast majority. And I'm curious how to what extent this is a conscious choice of yours, or whether it just somehow it just happens. Anything
it's
to say?
Totally conscious choice, actually.
It is, okay. And
despite the fact that Morton Feldman railed against the 20-minute piece to fit an LP.
Right.
It was a perfect length for me. And so many of the pieces, particularly all the orchestra pieces, which are scored, are 22 minutes.
Right.
Which fit very much on an LP.
Right.
One side of an LP.
Right.
Right.
Well, and I guess your earliest releases of your music were on LP. Isn't that right?
They were on LP. I mean, they were actually designed to go on an LP.
Right. And
to be, and some of them were longer, and it was a problem because they skirted into the area of having distortion because they were a little too long.
Right. Of course.
In fact, there's a most recent piece, which is in this 5 CD set of pieces from the Hermes Foundation, is 28 minutes, and it's too long to go on
a vinyl record,
on an LP.
Right.
So it's on a CD, but
right.
Frankly, I don't like to play LPs anyway.
Right. Well, that's the irony here. Go ahead.
I just got an LP in the mail a couple of days ago, which was a piece that the label that I'm releasing a lot of stuff on now is a Belgian label called Material Memoir, MM, and they just finished a set of 20 LPs by 20 different composers, where one side is a new piece for that LP, and the other side is a drawing. It's an etched drawing on the surface of the LP. And so I just got them in a couple days ago, and I was bringing 3 of them to the studio tonight to give one to David and Dan and Bob Belleroux.
Right.
And I'm thwarted because I couldn't do it. So later on, we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll definitely find a time to do that. That's great. Wow. So the etched drawing, was that is that just visual, or does that have a sonic potential when placed on it? Okay.
No grooves.
Right. And is the drawing, the etched drawings, something of yours, or just
yes,
it is. So
I think in all cases they were of the artist who did the piece.
I see. So this 20.
Mine was a piece which was a high contrast black and white slide originally. It was a cactus in Arizona, and captured on film so that the image was of the cactus was white and the background was black. And he reversed it, so he made it but the drawing itself on the record is white, but the record is clear. So it's a white drawing on a clear record.
Right. You you showed that to me via our Zoom connection. Just Phill and I can see one another tonight, just for the sake of our conversation. But you showed me the record. It looks beautiful. So that's the format of this 20 LP series from the Materie Memoir label in Belgium, and every one of them features one side of music by a composer, and then the other side is a visual also by the composer. Nice.
Many interesting composers. So
I bet. Well, how will we find out more about that series? Is I guess Materie Memoir. I guess that would be a Google search.
There's a website under that name. So
okay,
but can I spell it? No.
Well, that's all right. I think some people out there are going to grab that Materie Memoir. Well, we look forward to hearing that one. That's just recently pressed. You know, one other. I know you have a huge number of upcoming projects, and one that I want to touch on quickly is from the Touch label. You have a pretty long-standing relationship with the British, sort of, I guess, electronic music largely label. Really interesting label, Touch. And so what's the status of these? You have some DVDs or what is the USB stick releases in the works? Is that right? That can combine your films and music?
Yes. Yeah, it's one I'm really interested to have out, but there have been technical problems with it. And so it's been like 3 years getting out, but I think the technical problems are being solved now by a great video guy now in Arkansas, Adam Hogan, and his wife, Laura Staten.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to come out. It'll be 2 different films, which are each 2 hours long. And I think probably the best films from this Movement of People Working series, China, 1988, and Japan, 1989. And the last 2 years that I actually shot film, because the film was dying and the film lab stopped doing film in 89. With 4 hours of music, which is, I thought, very important music from 2013 and 2016. So many important pieces on that release. So I'm really anxious to get it out, and it's been very frustrating that it's been taking so long. Right.
Well, I guess this is a sort of a novel format there. The idea of releasing a USB stick that has audio and visual. I guess there isn't an established kind of technology to easily package that for mass production. Is that mainly the issue?
Well, the issue was that Blu-ray was the obvious choice, but there are no Blu-ray players. Nobody buys Blu-rays.
Right.
You can't do a Blu-ray because it's a gone thing.
Right. So to get something of this high resolution sound and video, you really have to put it on a USB stick,
or some way. Right. I mean, probably it will eventually be available as a download somewhere, but for now we're just trying to get the original thing out with the original artwork and stuff. So.
Okay. Well, good. Well, we'll look for that. Well, there's so many things I want to talk about, so many of these new projects in the works, but we've touched on a number of them. And
we better get on to that last piece because it's a long piece. So.
Yeah, exactly. We're getting close to the end. We're into the final quarter of tonight, and I just want to reiterate, just remind everyone you're listening to Musical Ecologies. I'm your host, Dan Joseph. This is a project of the Musical Ecologies series in Park Slope, Brooklyn. And you can learn more about the series at musicalecologies.net. And well, good. So we got one more piece to listen to. One just random thing I wanted to ask you about, Phill. Something that came to my attention earlier today, and that is the artist Yoko Ono, who I think you know this. I mean, I don't. Yoko Ono is 88 today. It's her 88th birthday. And I just wondered, being a longtime denizen of the downtown.
Of course,
Manhattan.
I'm 87. So
right. So you and Yoko are contemporaries. I wondered to what extent you guys had any overlap or interaction. I don't know how long ago exactly Yoko Ono was living in that general downtown area, but I'm wondering.
Sometime about 1965, Yoko was doing an exhibition at the Judson Theater,
Uh-huh.
which was called The Stone. So it was people in a tent room who got into a black gown and zipped it up, and they were crawling around on the floor in this black room.
Mm.
So they were stones on a black on a white background. And I shot a very short film and showed it to Yoko and Tony Cox at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Then the film just sort of sat in the can, and it was recently transferred to video files. So
Nice.
I have the film now. I haven't done any editing of it
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or sprucing it up, making it look better than it actually did.
Right. Well, good. Well, we hope.
That's the only time.
Right. Okay. Well, good. Well, I just, as I said, it was just a random thing that came to my attention via Yoko Ono on Twitter. I learned that she's 88 today. Happy birthday. Well, good. All right. So we better start winding it down towards the home stretch here. We're got one more piece.
Let's get that music in.
Yeah. But before we do, Phill, I want to know. You know, we've talked about a lot of things you're up to now, and a lot of events, a lot of links have been discussed, so much. So what was the best place for someone listening tonight to just follow up about Phill Niblock? Would philniblock.com be the most direct line to explore more about you and your work?
Probably the best place is simply experimentalintermedia.org.
Okay.
The website of Experimental Intermediate. But I just shipped a bunch of stuff to philniblock.com, which is actually published by Touch.
I see.
They did that website. So.
I see. So they're managing it or they're hosting it anyway.
But one thing to do is simply to Google Phill Niblock. And the last time I did it, there were 109,000 results. But I did it a few months ago, and it was 170,000. So I've dropped down.
I see. Well, that's an awful lot of links. But experimentalintermediate.org would be a good place to start, and then philniblock.com and
Yeah.
Well,
You can see a lot of the performances.
Right.
I think there's some examples. There's a lot of examples of the music on SoundCloud, and some on Vimeo, and. Like that,
and it's also worth mentioning your record label that is sort of a project of Experimental Intermedia, the organization, which is XI Records, and XI Records, while publishing a range of artists, has you've published quite a bit of your own work there as well, and I think much of that, if not all of it, is on Experimental Intermedia, XI Records on Bandcamp, for example. Is that right?
Yeah.
So
there are 3 releases on XI. So.
Only 3. Okay. Well,
of mine.
Well, there's certainly for me, those are some of the most important ones to me personally. I think I'm certain, in fact, that's when I first encountered your work was through the XI record CDs and during the 90s. Those CDs got around quite a bit and were very, very important. Those are some great recordings. So that's another place to look. Okay, so we're coming to the end here, I think, of our conversation, and so thank you, Phill, for joining me here tonight live from New York City. It's about almost 20 minutes to 10 o'clock.
Better hurry up.
So we have the last piece. So the last piece we're going to play. How do you pronounce this? It's ExplWatson. You tell me.
I just usually Explo, but without the O.
Okay, and this is part of the exploratory project that we were discussing earlier, which is a piece the original piece, Exploratory Rhine, Looking for Daniel, which is done by many different ensembles and artists, and in this instance, this is being done by David Watson, who we've heard from on the previous 2 pieces as well, and he's playing both Scottish bagpipes and guitar on this piece. Is that right?
True.
Right, and he contributed some live tracks to the pre-recorded tracks earlier today in studio, and so we're going to hear the resulting mix there. And I guess that's going to take us pretty much to the conclusion of this edition.
A bit over.
Well, it will be preempted at 10 o'clock by the next program, I think. But if you're listening to us on the Musical Ecologies partner stream, we'll keep this going well past 10 o'clock to the conclusion. And so, Phill, thank you very much for being part of the series, Musical Ecologies. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
And thank you, and I'm very, very sorry not to have been at the old stone house.
Well, I understand. I mean, it was a tough night out there, and we're all about safety and doing what makes sense. And I think this has been a lot of fun, even though we didn't get to spend the time in the same room together. It's certainly been a pleasure for me, and so thank you again, and thank you to our listeners. So here we go with the third piece.
David Watson and Bob Belleroux for
absolutely. Thank you.
Being
thank
around
you.
for us. So.
Absolutely. Thanks, both of you.
And you.
Thank you, Phill. Okay, here we go. We're going to listen now. Thank you for listening. And questions or comments about tonight's program can be emailed to info@musicalecologies.net. Okay, that wraps it up here. For those of you still listening on the Musical Ecologies partner stream, thanks for sticking with us to the end. And we just concluded the Musical Ecologies program tonight with David Watson's realization of Phill Niblock's composition "Exploratory Rhine," looking for Daniel, a piece that's being recorded by numerous ensembles and collected into a multi-CD release forthcoming. And that was Watson's realization, half Scottish bagpipes and half guitar. Did you have something to add there, Phill?
CD release forthcoming.
Whoop, you're echoing there in the background. In any case, we're just wrapping it up here tonight. And thank you for listening. And for more information about Musical Ecologies, visit our website at musicalecologies.net. And I invite you to join our mailing list to stay in touch. Phill, did you have one more comment? Oh, hang on there. Seem to have lost.
I'm not.
There we are. I got you now.
Great. I thought that was a really beautiful piece.
Yeah.
David Watson, thank you very much for that contribution. It was very nice. Really very nice.
Yeah, it was outstanding. That was a one-time only realization that we heard tonight. So good. I'm going to wrap up the stream here, Phill. So thank you again for joining me, and thank you to everyone who listened. And tune in again next month on Thursday, March 18th, and our guest will be singer, songwriter, and scholar Gelsey Bell. Okay, until then, stay safe. This is Dan Joseph signing off.